Hello there, you beautiful person. Thank you for joining me on another video. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ami Naili. I'm the eclectic witch, artist, author, developer behind the Kawaii Tarot and Cute Magic. Today we'll be talking about tech witchcraft or techno-paganism or technomancy. I know this format is a little different from my usual format, but that's because I'm camera shy and I just thought this would be an easier way to get information out there. Let me know what you think of it. Tech witchcraft is the practice of using technology as a magical tool. Computers and witches actually have a lot in common. If you look at what they deal in, literally, it's power both ways. Witches deal with the power to change reality, alchemy, manifestation. And computers deal with power as in electricity. In fact, do you know the term boot up your computer? It's a phrase that means turn on the computer. When you press the button to turn on the computer, what it does in the background is it makes a tiny little movement that triggers an action that barely takes any energy. And that action triggers another little action and another until the computer is fully booted up or turned on. That wording actually comes from the phrase, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, which means to create something, power, out of nothing, or to achieve an impossible task. So you can see that witches and computers are going towards the same thing, really. There are even crystals inside computers that the computer wouldn't work without. Despite this, computers sometimes do get a bad rap in the spiritual community. You'll hear, get off that computer, get off that phone, go out in nature, talk to a tree, or you'll hear the other end of the extreme. Computers are unnatural, they're not of nature, we shouldn't use them, technology is a bad thing, and we'd be better off without it. While I do agree that the tech industry is not making a good name for itself right now, with the addicting apps and, the things that they're dabbling in, computers are a part of our human progress, and we shouldn't villainize them. The man who first came up with the idea for a personal computer, because before then they were in basements, taking up entire basements for corporations, doing complex calculations, and that's it. Steve Jobs, the man who came up with the idea, he was actually inspired by a National Geographic article.
I think one of the things that really separates us from the high primates is that we're tool builders. And I read a study that measured the efficiency of locomotion for various species on the planet. The condor used the least energy to move a kilometer. And humans came in with a rather unimpressive showing about a third of the way down the list. It was not too proud of a showing for the crown of creation. So that didn't look so good, but then somebody at Scientific American had the insight to test the efficiency of locomotion for a man on a bicycle. And a man on a bicycle, or a human on a bicycle, blew the condor away, completely off the top of the charts. And that's what a computer is to me. What a computer is to me is it's the most remarkable tool that we've ever come up with. And it's the equivalent of a bicycle for our minds.
So yes, computers are progress. They are not a step in the wrong direction. And you can use technology to help human progress instead of hinder it.
How does work happen in your future?
Machines will operate machines. And the best way to do it is to leave it up to the machine. Humans have no participation.
They just reap the benefits.
Without further ado, here are 5 practices that you can use to practice tech witchcraft. Number 1, document. We can take a lot of inspiration from computer scientists and scientists in general when it comes to documentation. For witches, this comes in the form of a book of shadows or grimoire, or if you haven't heard those terms before, it's basically what you call a witch's journal, where she keeps track, or they keep track of magical spells like candle spells, tarot readings, moon phases, anything magical, just to get better at witchcraft and to keep a log of your activity. You want to document like a scientist because similar to a recipe book, you want to use your own magic again in 6 months, right? You don't want to look at your journal and think, what was I talking about there? What did I write there? What is that? What was I even trying to get to? So yeah, it's similar to a recipe book. You want to use your magic again in 6 months. You want other people to use your magic, and not just anybody, but I mean, if you hand your Book of Shadows down to your children or your grandchildren, you want them to be able to open up the book and use it as if they were right there with you. You also want them to give you credit for your magic. You want them to be able to contribute to your magic. And you want to allow for reproducibility, which is a fancy word for just get the same results over again. Like programming, pretty much. The first step in documenting in your Book of Shadows, your witchcraft, like a computer scientist, is to plan for it. Why I say that is essentially for energy allocation. I don't know about you, but when I sit down to do something and I do it, I'm done with it. It's like cooking or writing or doing magical spells. You say, I'm going to do this thing. You do that thing, and then you turn yourself off from that thing. Not always because you're tired, but it's time to shift tracks, and your energy's not in the same place anymore. So when I say plan for documentation, I'm saying think you have 100% of energy for this spell inside of you, and reserve 10% of that at the end for documentation. Don't put your all into the spell and then forget to document, because computer scientists say, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen, because it's tough to prove and it's tough to remember even. So plan for documentation. Another couple of tips for documenting in your Book of Shadows like a technologist are to take pictures, give examples, give stories, give anecdotes, support your claims with other research or other people's experiences if you can. Mention the expected and emphasize the unique so that things are interesting on reread. Use an app such as Book of Shadow Journals by yours truly. Lastly, there is an important concept in computer programming called DRY, or DRY. It stands for Don't Repeat Yourself. So if you find yourself looking up the same topic over and over again, or looking up charts, you're looking up the moon phases every month because you forget what they mean, or you're looking up a particular suit in tarot, don't repeat yourself. Make like a chart or a graph or something in your Book of Shadows so that you can reference it. That will save you a lot of energy and a lot of repetition, a lot of repetitive work. Another part of tech witchcraft is computer creativity. Now, everybody works on computers, especially nowadays. There's nobody that doesn't use a computer to work. You can play on computers too. And I don't mean that you have to learn HTML and CSS and API or whatever. You can do music on computers. You can do art on computers. Like I said, everybody does their job on computers, so why not play on them too? Now, if you're specifically looking to get into computers themselves, I recommend looking into Raspberry Pi and Zapier. So Raspberry Pi is hardware and Zapier is software. Hardware meaning like the physical thing that you can touch. Raspberry Pis are basically tiny computers. They don't look like computers. They look like a chip because they're so tiny, but they have plugs and stuff, so you can put a monitor into them, you can put a keyboard into them, anything you want. You can connect to a Raspberry Pi, and you can configure it to do anything you want with programming.
Lastly, there's going to be the Raspberry Pi that's going to be controlling this. And
1x3s, and then we have a couple pieces of 1x2s. These big
-r requirements.txt. Run the application. Now I'll hit enter to make it full screen. And now we have our very own smart mirror set up.
Zapier, on the other hand, is about software or websites and apps, the stuff inside the computers. What Zapier does is create APIs, or that's a fancy word for connections. It creates connections to websites and apps to each other with a point and click interface with no coding whatsoever, and you can make just magical things happen. Another form of computer creativity is online community for tech witches, creating relationships, networks, and serendipity. Online friends are great. First of all, they're low pressure, so even if you're an introvert, even if you're an empath, and you pick up a lot of people's energy and get bogged down by it, you can probably handle an online friend or two. You can probably even handle a group chat. Another great part of online friends is that you find each other by interest or purpose rather than geography. So you never get bored with online friends, and you get to see each other grow in your own unique ways. As far as social networks, I always recommend starting your own community, basically blogging, or you can use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok. Facebook I can't advise on, I don't really use it. Twitter, I haven't seen it be great for tech witches, surprisingly enough. There's a lot of clicks on there. Instagram is great. I highly recommend Instagram for tech witchcraft communities. YouTube is a lot of work, so if you're into that, go for it. And TikTok I can't advise on either, but I'm sure it's great. A quick mention about EMF waves. So EMF waves are electromagnetic fields that our computers, microwaves, cell phones, power lines, cell phone towers, fitness tracking device. Okay, there's a lot. They emit waves to varying degrees, and because we have significant exposure to them throughout the day, there have been studies done to show whether they're safe or not. And they've actually found that they can cause certain types of cancer and other health threats, such as neuropsychiatric effects, cellular DNA damage, and endocrine changes. Tech isn't bad, but EMF waves and overload of them can be. So stay safe and perhaps use some shungite to block the EMF waves. I think pretty much a lot of the black stones or crystals block EMF waves, so you can use them. Or sleep with your phone outside your room, just for a small little tip. My last tip for you is to use digital divination tools. If you already know how to code, or if you're interested in learning how to code, or you just like using websites, apps, computers, why not use digital divination tools? The founder of Tarot.com, the founder of AstroSeek.com, and Astro.com are all technomancers. In fact, Astro.com gives away a free API called the Swiss Ephemeris to connect to the stars. It's used by a lot of astrology apps, probably 99% of them, to make data from astrological readings. Another example of a digital divination tool is Kawaii Tarot, which again is by yours truly. Using digital divination tools, as well as making your own practice more interesting, also supports other tech witches. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you practice some of these? Or are you going to take up some of these practices? Let me know. Bye-bye. Peace out. See you laters.